Hi everyone. I haven't posted a video in about a week now, which has been pretty unusual for me, but I have been busy. I went to the movie theater a couple times, and then at home I watched a two-part, 6.5 hour movie plus all the supplements, a movie from 1972. So I've gotten away from my goal of reaching 50 movies from 50 years ago, 1972. But I think I have 45 in the playlist for 1972. So by the end of the year, I'm going to hit my goal of 50. It might even go past it by one. But in the 6.5 hour film I'm talking about is a two-part film, The Immigrants and The New Land. So this was a film with considerable Oscar recognition. The Emigrants for 1971 was nominated for Best Foreign Film. And then in 1972 was nominated for Best Picture, along with Liv Ullmann as in the Best Actress category, which she lost to Liza Minnelli in Cabaret, a movie I've yet to cover and will by the end of the year. And the director, Jean Troel, also, I believe, received nomination probably for his screenplay. And The New Land, in the same year, was nominated for Best Foreign Film. So the movie stars Max von Sydow and Liv Ullmann. They play characters called Karl Oskar and Kristen. And this is as the title indicates, this is a story of immigration. They are dirt poor farming family in Sweden, a section of Sweden that is full of rocks, very their subsistence level farming that has been affected by a lack of rain and unfertile ground. They were in a kind of hopeless situation. There's also a religious schism in this community of this section of Sweden that they're living in. So there's a group, and they decide to leave their native land and go to America, to Minnesota, where they're promised fertile ground. One of the families has a son who has already emigrated to Minnesota, so that's their goal. So the story is of both the hopelessness in part one, the perilous boat journey to America, the overland trip to Minnesota, and then in part two, the various struggles that they face in this new land. Now, the movie was a big hit in Sweden. I guess it was one of the biggest hits in Swedish cinema history, but it played well in America. It got very good reviews, and it was in a pared down version. They had to eliminate some scenes, because this is the two films together are 6.5 hours. I think the first one is 3 hours and 10 minutes, and the second one is 3 hours and 20 minutes. And then it would later play, a condensed version would play on American television where they condensed two films into one in a dubbed version, which I believe I saw. I can't remember exactly, but there were some scenes in here that seemed very familiar to me. I know I did not see it in the movie theaters. And it struck a chord particularly with Americans, because this is, for many Americans who are second and third generation Americans, this is sort of the genesis story of their parents, their grandparents, perhaps their great grandparents. Certainly my mother came to America, I think in the early 1920s, when she was about 10 years old. Her father, with the big family, was in sort of a similarly hopeless situation, and in order to have a better life for their children, they too came to America. But this is not the 1920s, this is the 1840s. So I believe it's 1850 when they actually arrived in America. And the director, Jean Terrell, is also the cinematographer. He's also the editor, and he operates the camera. He tried not to do that, but he wants to paint. He says in the supplements, and there's great supplements in this edition, he wants to paint with his camera. He's not comfortable with, and he tried to do this with one of his assistants operating the camera. And certainly many of the visual element of this film is oftentimes very much like a painting. And the camera digresses to flocks of geese and animals and nature. Nature, a big part of this film. And very much a use of close-ups. And he has Max von Sydow and Lee Volman, Carl Oscar and Kristen playing the two lead roles. And very much this is a focus on a marriage. For 6.5 hours, we get this historical story, but really this is an intimate drama of a marriage, and with two actors whose facial expressions just speak volumes. Lee Volman, and they had appeared together in many, I think 4 times in Ingmar Bergman's films, so they did know each other very well. And they were best of friends, because this is a friendship that is very explicitly a sexual friendship. The sexual life of this couple seems to be very fulfilling, and it continues on after a pause, even when Kristen has been warned by a doctor that another pregnancy might endanger her life. But they're best of friends as well. And that is the foundation of the movie, is this marriage that is so fulfilling through all these hardships, and it's not all ups. There's quite a few downs in the movie as well. And we do see the community that accompanies them to America. They're sort of on the edges. But we do get to know a few of those. But there is one other major character, and that is Carl Oscar's younger brother, played by Eddie Axberg. Now, he comes to America not so much to be a farmer, but to go to California and find gold and be rich and never have to work for a master again. He had been sent out in the early part of the film. He had been sent out because there's not enough food to feed him. He had to become like an indentured servant to a very sadistic farmer who both physically abuses him. So he doesn't want to work. He wants to be the master. His dream is to go to California. So he's the only other really major character. And I think one of the odd parts of the film is that we have this epic adventure that's really an intimate story of a marriage, but we don't see much of the kids. The kids as characters, they're there. We see them in bed. We see them running around the field and the farm, and it covers a number of years. So I was always curious, well, what happened to all these kids? None of them become a character, except when there's moments of calamity. And I think the film could be seen, the weakness of the film could be seen as that at times it seems like nonstop calamities. We have some short scenes, some long scenes, and then we have breaks, and then we go right back to more calamities. And this is a film about misery, and is it worth it? It's a very bleak and depressing depiction, which I was really surprised at. There's no joyous sense of community. There's no joyous sense of the family. It's just hard work and deaths and all kinds of injuries and things that happen. That is basically the arc of the narrative. Luckily, there are intermissions, and both films have pauses. So, and I had to use them because I'm not a big fan of misery as part of as the major part of films. But of course, there's lots of other strengths to this film besides the calamities. I just and it is based on a famous novel, a Swedish novel by Vilhelm Moberg. And he was still alive at the time that the film was made, so we see some photographs of him on the set, and he was notoriously cantankerous. And they were all worried that he was going to interfere too much, but he was only a couple places where he did. He was actually happy with the final film. And these novels, there's actually 4 novels broken down into 2 films. They are like the staple of Swedish literature. So if you were growing up and you took Swedish literature in high school, for most people, they would be very familiar with William Moberg's 4 novels. And Moberg did live in the U.S. For about 7 years, I think, during the writing of the film. So there's a great deal of authenticity. He did a tremendous amount of research. And as we learn in the supplements, Jan Troell and his co-screenwriter was also the producer in the movie. They had to pare down, obviously had to pare down a lot of the novel. But the dialogue, according to Troell, they didn't have to really write dialogue. They just had to structure the scenes in such a way. And in the supplements, one of the participants of the crew said that Troell would keep copies of the novel in his pocket, and when he would stage scenes, he would sometimes consult the novel to say, no, you have to sit here and you have to sit there to conform to the novel. There's also a great interview with Liv Ullmann. She believed this to be her signature role, her favorite role. When she was a little girl, she said she dreamed of having a marriage where she would be a lifetime experience, where she would be best friends with her husband. So she got to live her dream that she did not live in her own life, her dream of what a marriage would be like. And also she had, like I say, she had made 4 films with Max von Sydow. They were offset very good friends. And this was the movie that really made her an international star. She stayed in Hollywood, made Zandy's Bride that Jan Troell directed with Gene Hackman, and 40 Carats. I think she made 2 other movies before she said, no, Hollywood's not for me, back to Sweden. And made some more films with Ingmar Bergman. And Jan Troell, I think, made 2 films. I think he made Zandy's Bride, and I think he also directed Hurricane a couple years later. He too would return to Sweden. Hollywood was not for them. I also have to mention something about the immigrant experience. I mentioned that my own mother was part of it, and I'm sure many people listening to this had similar relatives in their ancestry that were immigrants. And I was thinking about a experience that I read, a woman from Venezuela who was on that airplane that was flown from Texas to I guess it was Cape Cod, through the aegis of the governor of Florida. Unannounced, they arrived by plane in Cape Cod, I guess as punishment to northern liberals for what states that deal with immigration much more voluminously than Cape Cod would in the off season. And the people were very kind to them and on Cape Cod, and one of the immigrants told of her story from walking from Venezuela to the Mexican border and what it was like, and they had to walk through swamplands, and families would just disappear in the muck and the mire. And then when they reached Mexico, there was bandits that were captured. They wanted all their money. Whether the bandits would let them go was just totally by whim. And you think of that, and I wish somebody would make a movie of that woman's story, just so Americans could see what these people actually go through to get to the border, leaving what for them is a hopeless situation. For this woman, as she saw it in her family, her children in Venezuela, versus the hopefulness that would be that she thinks is she perceives to be found in the U.S. So, anyways, this is one of 1972's most significant movies as far as Oscars, and it's certainly as far as time I really enjoyed it. And this is a terrific set. So the next Criterion sale, this is another one to contemplate picking up. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.